I found out that my wife was cheating on me and was honestly amazed by this. Of course, I understood that something was wrong in our relationship, but I didn't think that to such an extent. I became interested in the reason why my wife decided to cheat on me. And at first, I thought that I was just not satisfying my wife, but in fact, everything turned out to be much simpler. 9 months ago, you believed you left me here completely broke. Prior to that, you were burning through money faster than it was coming in. Now you're residing in the affluent part of town with the banker's son whom you work for. Although work might be a generous term, reflecting on it now, you were the one who persuaded me to refinance with that bank. You also insisted on putting all the new vehicles and equipment in your name as a precautionary measure in case of bankruptcy. When I received divorce papers, I immediately contacted my lawyer to ensure everything was in order. All purchases were made under the farm's corporate name, and you were never listed as a corporate officer, only my sister and I were. You always questioned why I used my lawyer for tag and title services instead of the local one on Main Street. You complained about the expenses, but I believe insurance is never too costly. I managed to log into the new mortgage account using the computer in the farm office, which I assume you overlooked in the bank's records. It's clear you haven't made loan payments for over 6 months. The day you left me, I was working at the feed mill while you were busy moving out all morning, thinking I was unaware. Yet you had me served with divorce papers at 3:30, strategically chosen because by the end of the business day, the farm would face foreclosure. I was well aware of this. The mortgage was supposed to be paid off electronically at 3:50 the same afternoon. At 5:00, as you headed to the bank to return home, you were confronted by a process server who handed you divorce documents citing adultery. I couldn't press charges for theft or embezzlement because your name was on the accounts you withdrew money from. I had all your accounts frozen. Yes, I knew about the 2 accounts in your bank and the 3 in the neighboring town, where you stashed all the money. My lawyer and his investigator had been diligently working for the 5 months leading up to your departure. Now everyone has some context. Here's the rest of the story. In our neighborhood, everyone goes by a 2-part name. If someone only has one name, they're a whole different kind of person from the rest of us. But don't worry, you'll get used to it. I go by Billy Joe Arnold, although most of my friends just call me BJ. The woman I mentioned earlier, my wife, is Mary Jo. We've been together since high school, all 12 years of it. My only sibling is my sister, Bobby Jean. She married Tommy John Revere, whose parents own the feed mill in town. I work there 3 days a week, except during planting season. There are 5 of us on staff, Mr. Revere, Tommy John, Bobby Jean, myself, and Cindy Liu. To those of you sticklers for English etiquette, I know it's unconventional not to list myself last, but I wanted to highlight Cindy Liu for a moment. Cindy Liu, 3 years younger than her sister Mary Jo, has retained her tomboyish nature into her 27th year. Her dating history consists of just one occasion, attending senior prom with her cousin Jimmy John. Despite her limited romantic experience, Cindy Liu possesses exceptional skills in activities such as riding, roping, herding cattle, and farming, surpassing most individuals in the area. Upon graduating from high school, she applied for a position at the mill but was initially rejected. Undeterred, Cindy Liu confronted Mr. Revere, the owner asserting her determination. "I will work for you. I'll outperform any man accomplishing more in a day and doing it better and faster. If I fail to deliver within 2 weeks, you owe me nothing and I'll leave." 8 years later, she remains employed at the mill, proving her worth with exemplary performance. For the record, the elderly gentleman known as Mr. Revere prefers to be addressed as such or simply as old man. He assumed this title 5 years after his father's passing, proudly stating that it took him 55 years to earn it, and he has no intention of relinquishing it. His wife is commonly referred to as young lady, and suggesting otherwise would likely prompt her to demonstrate that she's anything but a lady. Mary Jo and I tied the knot shortly after graduating from high school. While I assisted my father on the farm and worked part-time at the mill for extra cash, Mom and Dad set up a double wide on a secluded corner of the property for us. Away from the hustle of the main house and outbuildings, Mary Jo found employment at the Happy Head Salon and Nails in town, renowned for their slogan, "You will glow with sheer delight." My father always warned me never to trust Samuel Smith, our local banker. He'll deceive you, exploit you, spit you out, all while wearing a smile, and you'll thank him in the end, he'd say with a grin. Dad would always chuckle and add, "He's slicker than whale excrement and just as useless." Sam was a regular at the Happy Head every other week. With only a thin strip of hair circling his head and a shabby mustache, he resembled a forgotten cat's leftovers mixed with something that crawled out of a swamp. As for his son Elwood, who trailed in an hour later, he was an indistinguishable blend of the two. Their appearances made me wonder about the ratios. Despite their dubious appearances, they somehow managed to persuade Mary Jo that she was the perfect fit for the bank. She returned home that evening, brimming with excitement, ready to leave her job as a nail technician at the Happy Head to work for them. I informed her that her wages weren't necessary. However, she consistently spent every penny on clothing and women's items. She justified this by stating she needed them to present well at work. We also had a substantial amount saved up. By that time, we had been married for over 9 years. The following day, my world fell apart. Usually I accompanied Mom and Dad into town for grain deliveries, and afterward, they liked to stop at the diner. However, the brakes on our grain truck gave out while we were heading into town with a load. There's a gradual 2-mile downhill slope on the way, culminating in a curve at the bottom. According to the state police, the gear shift was stuck in low, and witnesses along the route claimed the engine had to be revving well beyond its limit. Despite setting the emergency brake, the shoes were completely worn down. We had only put about 800 miles on those shoes. The truck was going too fast and couldn't negotiate the curve. It collided with a telephone pole and caught fire. I was assured that it was moving too quickly to have caused any harm. The state police couldn't establish evidence of tampering with the truck, but the cause was attributed to a loose brake line. 3 weeks later, after things calmed down, Mary Jo told me she was starting a job at the bank. "I've already left my position at the Happy Head," she said. I tried to dissuade her, but I was accused of trying to hinder her progress. Where did she get such expressions? She could barely tie her shoelaces or count to 20. In the evenings, she started chatting with the women from the bank. One evening, the sheriff brought her home in a state of heavy intoxication. She could not sit up straight. Another evening, when she was returning home from another walk, she was stopped by the police. I put her on the bed and noticed that her skirt was pulled up and there were bruises on her skin in the form of palm prints. The presence of a white liquid confirmed my decision to divorce her. I gathered evidence using photographs and DNA samples. Our intimacy decreased significantly about 2 months after she started working at the bank. That evening, I discovered that she was taking birth control pills and there was a mobile phone in her purse that I didn't know existed. The following day, she arrived at work exceptionally late, while I spent 2 hours scouring the house for any other intriguing items. I stumbled upon evidence indicating that she had consistently been taking birth control pills throughout our marriage. It appeared that she had kept the original pill dispenser as a memento. It seemed that every time her prescription changed, she held on to the initial container. As I had mentioned before, her intelligence was lacking. I contacted the doctor to confirm my suspicions. After speaking with the nurse, I received confirmation regarding the dates of prescription changes. My hunch was correct. Throughout our marriage, she had always insisted, "It must be you who is the issue. I'm perfectly fine." Shortly after her parents passed away, I attempted to discuss the farm's finances with her. However, she showed no interest and bluntly stated, "You handle the farm. I'll take care of the household and mortgage. Everything will be fine. Trust me." She was unaware that we had $2 and $75 million sitting in farm accounts, accruing interest. Dad opted to deposit all his money in a bank located about 12 miles away. A few years back, he took out a mortgage on the farm to purchase a new combine. He always emphasized the importance of maintaining good credit by consistently paying off the mortgage each month, believing that having substantial cash reserves in the bank was meaningless without recent credit activity. Despite his financial acumen, his grammar was not impeccable. Mary Jo persuaded me to secure a mortgage from the bank where she worked, citing lower interest rates and 0 points due to her employment there. After arranging the new loan, I accessed the account through a website, as Mary Jo never ventured into the filthy office in the barn. As a precaution, I began leaving a bit of manure near the office door just as a form of insurance. Approximately 8 months prior to Mary Jo's decision to depart, I scheduled a meeting with my attorney. We drove to a diner in a neighboring town during which he took notes as I drove. He advised installing a video security system on the farm, recording all phone calls and equipping all vehicles with GPS trackers. When he inquired about surveillance on Mary Jo, I instructed him to proceed with all measures. Additionally, I provided him with access codes to the mortgage for monitoring payment activity. Norman, my attorney, is one of the sharpest individuals I know, but his father, Earl, was even more brilliant. Earl is a master of disguise. I once saw him at a Halloween party convincingly portraying an 18-year-old girl. No one recognized him until he spoke, sternly telling someone to leave. It reminded me of the saying about people with single names being entirely different creatures. In less than a month, we gathered all the necessary information to proceed with the divorce. I encouraged them to continue with full force. I wanted to ensure we had an abundance of evidence. Earl understood why they coveted the farm. It sat at the heart of a plot of land that a consortium, controlled by the bank, intended to develop into a massive shopping center. In the meantime, I visited the doctor, claiming I had slipped while getting off the tractor. The notes indicated a severe groin injury, and I was prescribed pain medication along with other pills whose purpose remained unknown to me. Following the prescribed schedule, I disposed of the pills down the toilet every day. I informed the doctor that the pain was too unbearable for any kind of bed activity. Later, I visited a clinic an hour away and was confirmed to be free of any STD. Earl, resourceful as ever, found a prostitute who had herpes, commonly referred to as the love bug. She was working as a nail technician in a town miles away from us. Earl persuaded her to apply for a job opening at Happy Head. Given the high turnover rate since Mary Jo's departure, we offered her $200 per week, along with covering her rent during her employment. If she could provide evidence of having intercourse with Elwood Smith, the payment would increase to $500. Any income she earned from nail services was hers to keep. Additionally, there was a $10,000 bonus if Elwood contracted herpes. A month later, she started receiving $500. Norman, Earl, and I were thrilled when we noticed that his instrument was only the size of a pack of nickels. Amy, the easygoing girl we hired, claimed he was the worst lover she'd ever had. I tend to believe her, especially after watching the video where she insisted that he engage in intimacy with her. Watching Elwood and Amy, I realized that Mary Jo wasn't with them because of how he was in bed. She decided to continue our investigation, as a result of which we discovered that she had several accounts with moderate amounts of money on each. To this day, I am grateful to URL for not being as moral as a lawyer should be. Perhaps that is why he resigned. Without his involvement in my case, a lot of things might have gone unnoticed. In total, over a little over 9 years, she transferred just over $300,000 to her accounts. I doubt she ever knew how rich I really am. Now she'll never know if I have a say in this matter. Earl has a close friend named Bob who excels in computer wizardry. He detests unfaithful spouses, having experienced one himself. Bob possesses an unparalleled knack for locating files and boasts top-notch Photoshop skills. His intervention led to significant legal consequences for his wife, almost resulting in her imprisonment for perjury. The first indication of her deception arose with the birth of their second child, who was of mixed race. Bob's mantra was, even if you eliminate the problem, there's still plenty left to resolve. I advised Earl that it was acceptable to involve Bob, but insisted that all evidence must be genuine. The gravity of the situation warranted avoiding any fabricated elements that could jeopardize it further. I had a feeling that divorce papers would be coming my way soon. The day they were served, I was working on the loading dock with Cindy Lou, helping unload a truck. She's amazing with a forklift. When she spotted the server approaching me, she chased him off the dock with the forklift, right up until he reached the stairs. I called her into the warehouse and told her to let him do his job as I had been anticipating it. Ironically, she ended up getting served herself just 90 minutes later when she left work. Anyway, she had already removed all her belongings from my house. 5 minutes later, all her credit cards were deactivated. Her cell phone, which was under my account, was disconnected, and her car was towed away from the bank to an undisclosed location. All I had to do was utter the words, "Do it," over the phone to Norman. Cindy Lou was furious. I took her out for dinner and made sure she had enough to drink to calm down. The next morning, she was in such a state on the loading dock that she couldn't function. Between the hangover and her anger, she was ready to lash out at anyone who approached her except me. She wanted to cling to me and seek solace. Eventually, the old man came out and instructed us to find a room, declaring, "I won't tolerate that kind of behavior here." A few minutes later, Bobby Jean emerged and told us to take the day off with pay. "Be prepared to work tomorrow," she said. As I drove to a remote location, I outlined most of the details about what her sister had done to me. I explained that I had been tested for STD and came out clean. I hadn't had any contact with her sister since then. Cindy Lou wanted me to drive her to town so she could physically confront her sister. I warned her that my retaliation would be more severe than anything she could do with her fists. "Don't count on it," she shot back angrily. "How can she treat you like that? She's acting this way because she lacks self-respect," I muttered. "You can't stop me. I'll make her pay," she yelled. I believed her. "Wait until after we're officially divorced, please. If you have even an ounce of care for me, don't disrupt the plans already in motion," I pleaded. "If I have even the slightest care for you, you're my everything. You're the greatest blessing in my life. Why do you think I never entertained the idea of dating anyone else? From the moment I laid eyes on you, I knew we were meant to be. I'm aware," I murmured softly, "and so is everyone else at the mill." "Was I really that transparent? Only to those who witness you every single day," I chuckled. Mary Jo remains oblivious. She's too consumed by her own petty schemes. We had recently arrived at a quaint park, retrieving a substantial lunch from my car trunk. We settled by the riverbank to enjoy it. I shared as many details as I could about the divorce proceedings without revealing too much. Upon returning to town, she seemed notably more composed. I left her at the mill to retrieve her car. Before exiting the vehicle, she bashfully planted a soft kiss on my cheek. "You're the first man I've ever kissed aside from my father," I observed as she drove away. Over the course of the following months, our bond strengthened as we spent more time together. We shared meals at each other's homes and sat side by side during lunch breaks at the mill. Despite our closeness, we maintained a respectable distance in public, ensuring transparency in our interactions. With windows always open to the world, there was no room for suspicion. Meanwhile, my friends often mentioned a persistent acquaintance who trailed me incessantly. One day I confronted him, startling him as I grabbed his collar. I revealed that I was aware of his surveillance for the past 4 months, but assured him I wouldn't allow him to gather any incriminating information. After treating him to lunch, he never bothered me again. At Cinder's urging, we both dedicated considerable time to mingling with our fellow mill workers. Whether it was one of us, the other, or both of us together, we made efforts to engage with them. From an external perspective, it seemed as if we formed a cohesive and contented family within the mill, and indeed we were. When Mary Jo left me, she took all the motor vehicles except for the old beat-up truck that I always drove. I had purchased it second-hand before we finished high school. Over the years, I had made various modifications and upgrades to suit my preferences. The truck was registered solely in my name, while she assumed ownership of the others and took them when she left. Approximately every other month, one of the vehicles would vanish from her hiding spot, never to be recovered. She reported these disappearances as thefts to the police. However, I had already contacted the insurance agent and terminated the policies for all of them, which she never noticed. I instructed the insurance company to delay providing her with any information or payouts for the losses. Often she was unaware when the vehicles were removed from their hiding places, and we would retrieve them using GPS tracking at our convenience. Even when she relocated them, it made no difference. Earl had access to the keys and drove most of them away. On one occasion, he had to borrow a front-end loader from a nearby construction site to dismantle a fence and wall. He returned the equipment with little evidence of its involvement, and the owners insisted it had been secured in a manner that should have prevented its use when questioned by the police. She spent the majority of her time driving one of Elwood's BMW as a way to compensate me for allowing her to use the vehicles. She arranged for many of my farming tools to be repossessed by the dealer. When the dealer contacted me to inquire about the situation, I advised him to simply comply with her instructions. I suggested that while he had possession of the tools, he should inspect them thoroughly to ensure they were in optimal condition. After all, you can only recover what you have a lien on. Given that the bank had issued a work order for the repossession of the property, I recommended that the dealer invoice them for the services rendered. I also suggested he inform the bank that without the necessary repairs, the value of the items would be significantly reduced when sold. Would you believe it? The bank actually covered the cost of the repairs and storage. Elwood's brief affair with Amy was still ongoing with vigor. Approximately 3 weeks prior to the divorce hearing, tensions escalated between Elwood and Mary Jo. Suddenly, Elwood opted to sport a goatee and mustache. Thelma Marie, proprietor of the Happy Head, ejected him from her establishment one day, making it abundantly clear that he was unwelcome to fur return. The following day, rumors began circulating in the town that he had developed herpes sores around his mouth. The security camera footage from the beauty salon unmistakably confirmed this. Amy received her bonus payment and was encouraged to depart from town. Surprisingly, she chose not to leave and instead moved in with Earl, with whom she began a romantic relationship. Earl later confided in me, saying, "I'm 75 and something's bound to get me eventually. I'll be cautious, but I'll miss her if she decides to leave." The following week, Mary Jo visited me and begged for me to reconsider taking her back. "Absolutely not," I responded. "I could easily resort to violence, but I refuse to degrade myself in such a manner. My father taught me that only a coward would lay a hand on a woman, regardless of her actions." The following day, she returned to inquire once more. I instructed her to depart, expressing my finality. "I have no intention of resorting to violence, just leave immediately." She kept her distance until the divorce hearing, attempting to persuade the judge that we should undergo counseling. She admitted fault and professed genuine love for me. Her testimony was rife with falsehoods, all sworn under oath. It was a meticulously crafted and persuasive argument. Elwood was summoned and reluctantly testified in her favor. The judge was nearly swayed. Next, the judge requested our presentation regarding the divorce on grounds of infidelity. Norman provided the judge with a comprehensive package and informed him that it included a compilation of the best evidence, consisting of over 320 hours of video footage and 15,000 pages of documentation, detailing her theft of my money, vehicles, equipment, as well as mom and dad's antique furniture. He elaborated on how all these items had been recovered and safely stored, or the accounts frozen. Norman also explained in depth how she had schemed to avoid making loan payments to ensure the repossession of my farm. The following day, the judge ruled in our favor, no longer swayed by doubt. Mary Jo and Elwood were detained and charged with perjury. The following day, upon her release into her parents' care, I witnessed her departure from the jail. She attempted to provoke me into hitting her, with the police observing the entire exchange. When she tried to strike me, I firmly grasped her hands, refusing to engage in violence. I will never lay a hand on you. That's not who I am, I assured her. Suddenly, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Releasing her, I watched as she turned to address the person behind her. In an instant, a forceful blow struck her right eye, followed by subsequent hits to her left eye and nose, causing it to bleed profusely. Upon ceasing the assault, she glanced up to find Cindy Lou eagerly anticipating a reason to continue. Once more, I interjected, "I wouldn't harm you," pausing for emphasis, "but my girlfriend just might." With a kiss between Cindy Lou and me, we turned and walked away from the stunned onlookers, leaving them speechless. Cindy Lou moved in with me that night. We postponed our first bedtime meeting until our wedding night. The first time I saw her without outerwear was not accidental on her part. It was a brief moment, and I felt like I was in heaven. I almost stumbled in mid-sentence as I turned to leave the room. When we first made love, I was sure that I'd gone to heaven now. Almost 2 years later, we have twin boys and another baby on the way. It seems that the problem was not with me. Before our wedding, she gave me a prenuptial agreement. It was signed, sealed, and copied 3 times. I framed one copy and hung it over the entrance to the manure pit. Mary Jo did not receive an invitation to the wedding, but we sent her a video of the ceremony. She is currently serving a sentence of 6 to 24 months for perjury. Cindy Lou warned her sister to keep a distance of at least 1,000 feet from us. Otherwise, there would be a repetition of events. Thelma Marie mentioned she could go back to being the nail girl at the Happy Head Saloon. Elwood, also known as Nickel in town, completed his sentence and was disowned by his father. He departed for unknown destinations. Earl is extremely content with his second love. Amy acknowledges that his first true love was Norman's mother and is glad it remains that way. Their baby girl was delivered via C-section. Bob has finally discovered his ideal partner in Thelma Marie, who is delighted with him. She even presented him with a prenuptial agreement. His surprise on their wedding night was palpable when he discovered Thelma Marie was a 45-year-old virgin. Despite this unexpected revelation, they made efforts to address the issue. Bob is renowned for having the most attractive hair among bald men. Norman is contemplating a name change to Fantastic Sunshine, as it seems having 2 names is the trend among the locals. Enjoy or dislike the text, it makes no difference. Just remember to be courteous, or I'll have to wield my red pen with full force. And yes, saloon was the intended term in the 4th to last paragraph. That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck.